is this universal law in which all things in nature attempt to time themselves to each other. Why? To save energy, because it's an ecological universe.
The Soul Inspire podcast is brought to you by DaleCross.net. Discover the freedom, bliss, and ecstasy within you. At DaleCross.net, I can help connect you with your soul's purpose, passion, and mission. Your soul signed up for something great. Discover what it is with the tools I offer. Book a free one-on-one consultation now at DaleCross.net and live your greatness. Hello, I'm your host, Dale Cross, and welcome to another episode of the audio-video podcast Soul Inspire. This is the podcast that features spiritually awakened souls to help your own soul on your own unique spiritual journey. On this episode, it is my great pleasure to interview Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. Dr. Thompson is the founder-director of the Center for Neuroacoustic Research in Carlsbad, California. It's a research center which is actualizing its vision of healing the body, heart, mind, and spirit through the scientific application of sound. Dr. Thompson is considered the world's premier sound healing researcher, brainwave entrainment expert, and high-tech personal transformation innovator, motivator, and futurist. He is a physician, musician, composer, inventor, educator, and author. His work addresses harmony between the body, mind, spirit, and it's clinically proven to foster deep personal wellness and expansion of consciousness. He's certified in multiple healthcare modalities, and he draws people nationally and internationally to his clinical practice and to his cutting-edge auditory, kinesthetic, and visual therapeutic products and services. You may have seen him on the Netflix documentary Heal. Dr. Thompson, welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be here.
All right, now tell us a little bit to start us off about your spiritual journey and how it led to this work in healing the body, heart, mind, and spirit through the scientific application of sound.
How many weeks do we have here?
In a nutshell.
I mean, you can never tell where all of this is going to lead you. When you put your foot on the path for why you might be here, then it's going to be the ride of a lifetime. I mean, I went to art school in the 60s. I was a musician and a filmmaker and an artist. I went to art school, have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. That's what I thought I was going to do. And actually graduated, formed a business. And then years later, when I was 29, I went back to school. I went to chiropractic college. It was my best friend who started working on me to do that. But the reason I went was because this body is a textbook of universal law. And in my own search and journeys, I explored a number of different forms of meditation and Eastern meditation practices and esoteric sciences from all over the world. I was exploring. I was reading and doing everything I could. So to go to chiropractic school was really an extension of that. As a matter of fact, I'd never been to a chiropractor when I went to chiropractic college. So that tells everything you need to know about me. Right. Because I wasn't going there to do that. I was going there to learn about this from the absolute scientific medical standpoint.
Yeah.
I wanted to know all of it because I knew instinctively that the the sacred mathematics and the divine proportions and the numerologies and all the other stuff would be there. And I was absolutely not disappointed. But, the only way you could get through memorizing all of that wiring diagram of the brain and all the muscles and the joints and was to illustrate it. So that's where I brought my strong point back, my artist part.
Mm-hmm.
If I drew the anatomy of the brain and the spinal cord and the nerve roots and the muscles and the joints and the cells and embryology and all the rest, the more perfectly I made those drawings, the more perfectly it was burned in my brain. Right. And the better grades I got. And pretty soon fellow students are looking at these study drawings and going, whoa, those are awesome. Can I have a copy of that? Pretty soon I'm binding them together and selling them and putting myself through school as a medical illustrator.
Wow.
So like I said, you never can tell what the heck is going to happen. It's, and then I graduate. Well, in some place in that process of 4 years, the academic part and the anatomy and physiology and chemistry and biology and all that stuff is over, and you're into clinical science now. Okay. Blood work and adjusting techniques and learning about conditions and how the body works and diseases, and then you get into clinic in the last year and you start actually working on people. Someplace in there, a transformation took place for me where this abstract information got grounded. All the information that I was learning about anatomy and physiology had a practical application where I could do something physically with another human being and help them to get healed. And that became something that was unexpected for me, that it just galvanizes you. If you can help someone, it's amazing. It's an amazing experience. I mean, the very first person was a friend of mine who had migraines, and I brought her in because I need requirements. I need a certain number of people to see before I can graduate, and you can only see a limited number of friends. The rest have to be, not friends or fellow students. But this was one of my friends, and she had these chronic migraines, and I found she had these cranial problems. And right. So I made an adjustment of her cranial bones. And in a week, she called me up and she said, I haven't had a single migraine.
Wow.
I think this worked. And I'm going, oh, wow.
You weren't expecting
I did something and it worked, and then she called me up on the weekend and said, I'm having a nosebleed. And I'm going, because nosebleeds are caused by cranial faults. The cranial bones are 26 different bones assembled together like a jigsaw puzzle with joints, and they're supposed to move. Right. That's what pumps the cerebral spinal fluid around, and that's an electrolyte that bathes the brain and charges up all the neurons and makes it much more efficient. It's not just a pressurized fluid to protect your brain from, striking your head. And so I'm asking her, well, have you ever had nosebleeds before? And she's going, well, yeah, when I was in high school, I had them all the time. But I went to the doctors, they fixed that. I said, well, what did they do? Well, they cauterized my nose. I mean, what is that? They stick a hot poker up your nose and burn the blood vessels so they can't bleed anymore.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm going, oh, I didn't even know they did that. But how long after that procedure was it before you started having headaches? And it was like, boing, the light bulb went off in her head. It was like, oh my God. Within 2 months, I was having headaches. And I went to doctors and they couldn't do anything. They gave me pills. And then by the time she's 30, she's got migraines, and she's got migraines every week now. And this adjustment of the cranial bones did something called retracing, where you retrace back to an original problem that now gets revealed. and now you can fix the original problem that never got fixed, that created all these other compensation things that spun from that. So I had her come in. I could check cranial bones. I could find the one that was going on, and I could fix that one. And all the problems are now over. Migraines are over, and the original nosebleed problem is over. So now it's like the Sherlock Holmes part of me has arisen. And when I graduated and I got into, I got this dream job after I passed the state board exam in Virginia. That's where I went, because my parents had retired there, and I was broke after I got out of school. They helped me get out of town, stayed with them until I could take the board exam. Got a dream job in the largest holistic health center in Virginia, where the idea was let's pack as many holistic therapies under one roof as possible, and every person who comes in gets a complete exam of all their body systems: cranial, structural, muscular, meridian, blood work, just to see a state of the union, and then fix everything you find with a bunch of different methods. And and people get well when you do that. And in the context of that, at one point, I realized I'm a successful young doctor in a huge clinic, largest holistic health center in the whole state. And I could do something I've always wanted to do. And that is go take out a bank loan and buy all the equipment necessary to outfit my spare room as a top-notch recording studio.
Wow.
And make an album as a composer, musician and composer. I've always wanted to do that, so I'm going to do that. Even if I give these tapes away, for Christmas presents for the next 30 years, so be it. At least I did that, check it off my list.
Right.
I went and I did that, outfitted my spare room with advanced electronic keyboards and professional recorders and mixing boards and racks of equipment. And then my wife at the time wanted me to work on her back because, oh, that's right, I'm a chiropractor, right? So I popped up my portable table in the spare room like I always do, put her on the table, and all of a sudden I realized I've just been set up by the universe because I've got a patient on a table in a recording studio.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I wonder if I could make a chiropractic adjustment with a sound wave.
Wow.
Each vertebra is a different shape, density, and mass, like a bunch of different wine glasses. So I should be able to test for the frequency for the fifth lumbar. And I set that up and found a frequency and put a speaker on her back. And 5 minutes later, she gets up and she's fine. And I realized, wow, that little decision, I wonder if I could change my whole life. Like everything changed from that moment, because I now brought this into the clinic and I started working on patients with sound frequencies. I could resonate individual cranial bones and do cranial adjustment with sound waves. Or what about organs? What about glands? There are certain, each one is a different density and shape, and you should be able to resonate that as well. And when it started coming to the brain as an organ, what if I could resonate the brain? But the brain controls everybody else. Maybe I could do a hole-in-one. Maybe instead of playing doctor below the hood here with finding frequencies for this and that, I could go to this system that controls all of that and balance this here and let it balance them like it should have been doing in the first place. And when I saw that work, that was it. It was like, oh, wow, I have to do this. I have to do this full time. Nobody's doing this stuff. I have to do this.
Cool.
So I sold my practice and I sold my house and I got a big bundle of money and moved to California, where they don't drag you away and lock you up for these kind of crazy ideas. And started a big center and got a lot of press and television, and and I was off and running, and it's just grown since then.
So it just took off.
It took off in a big way. I mean, the universe says yes to you when you make the right decisions. I mean, my first year of practice in this clinic, this huge clinic, and the guy who ran that clinic was the most amazing healer I've ever met. The things I learned from him was just amazing. And in a month, he took off. And me and the other young greenhorn, got this whole clinic landed on our laps. 40 patients a day I was seeing, and I had a trained nurse with me and a full front desk staff. And he got involved in an investment scheme that blew up in his face, and he ended up in bankruptcy court. And me and the other guy are going, hey, we're going to be out of a job next week. Do you have any money saved? No. What are we going to do? We're the ones seeing all the patients. I mean, so we approached the bankruptcy court and bought that clinic for a song and a dance. Bankruptcy court didn't want any part of the specialized equipment, all this stuff.
Wow.
They were happy to unload it to us. And I ended up with the largest holistic health center in my lap in my first year of practice.
Oh my God.
How's that the universe saying yes to you?
Yes.
And it goes on like that. I mean, before I went to chiropractic school, I was starting a film production company, artist, filmmaker. Mm-hmm. And my best friend was working on me saying, no, don't do that. Come out to Iowa, become a chiropractor. Look what these guys are doing. Anything, you're a smart guy. Anything, all the stuff you've learned about esoteric science, it's here. Learn that. So finally I said, okay, yeah, I'll come out and see you. So I went out to Iowa, spent a week. I was like blown away. I have to do this. This is obvious. He was right. So I come back. I've got this big house, a 2-story house full of incredible stuff, films and musical instruments and stuff I'd traded with other artists. And I'm looking at all this stuff. I'm going, how am I going to get this out to Iowa, for God's sake? I mean, and how am I going to get first and last month rent and school supplies? And this isn't going to happen. How am I going to do this? And my sort of circle of elders up there, whose job it is to look out for this, for the growth of my soul, we're up there going, oh no, he's talking himself out of his destiny. What are we going to do?
Right.
So they burned my house down. They burned the whole thing down. My films, my cameras, my musical instruments, everything I'd ever done, up in smoke. I only had one shoe and I didn't have a toothbrush. I mean, it was all gone. But the insurance money was just enough to go to Iowa, first and last month rent, school supplies, no problem, get myself all set up, no problem, and I could travel light. So, always be a little aware of, that if you don't make the right decision for the big decisions, then somebody's going to have to step in and do some heavy duty lifting in order to get you in the right path, right?
Right.
So I kind of look at myself as, I've been in 40 years of practice now. I mean, here I am. And thank God my house burned down.
Exactly.
I hate to have lost all those films and all that stuff, and some of it irreplaceable, but it was all for another purpose. So I kind of look at myself as having been drafted for this job.
Drafted by the universe.
Drafted by the universe for this.
Yeah.
Job. So and so here I am, and this work has evolved over the years into its present form. It's gone through a series of changes. It's remarkable. I've learned a lot.
This is really fascinating how you're talking about when you say yes to the universe says yes to you. And it seems like when we align with what it is the theory is we signed up for certain things before we incarnated here. And it's like, if a person can connect with that, things are going to be cleared for you. And if you hit some obstacles along the way, it just means more things are being cleared. It sounds like.
I've learned a lot from the interactions of what I've seen happen with patients over the years. You know,
Right.
the so I'm using this sound technique. I'm using precisely tuned sound frequencies to balance the center in your brain,
Mm-hmm.
the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic, parasympathetic. Um, it's the master control program that tells all systems what to do. And it's also the seat of the uh, stress handling system.
Okay.
Uh, and the sympathetic, parasympathetic is like on a seesaw. When the sympathetic turns on, I mobilize all my body energies into my muscle to fight for my life.
Right.
And when the parasympathetic is on, the sympathetic goes off, and all the energy is now mobilized into my gut and elimination systems to digest my food, eliminate toxins. It's called the relaxation response. But when neither of those two systems are mobilizing my energy for some purpose, they should both be off, right? They should be at neutral.
Mm-hmm.
It's called homeostasis.
Yes, right.
Zeroed out. And when it's zeroed out, all that energy now comes back into my reservoir. And my body is working on its never-ending maintenance list of 1,000 things to do every minute, right? Think of all the things under the hood here that have to be accomplished just for me to take my next breath and actually oxygenate my tissues properly. It has to be synchronized up. All my organs and glands have to work together and be balanced, and my biochemistry has to work. I mean, all of these things have to happen. Every time I move a joint at a microscopic level, the joint surfaces are killing the cells on the surface through friction. But new cells are being born to replace them at the same rate because there's this list that's being worked on. Self-maintenance, repair. So if, and the requirement for all that to happen is this neutral place. Zero stress in the system, homeostasis, prerequisite for healing. Because when the sympathetic or the parasympathetic turn on, the reservoir empties.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes to my muscle to fight for my life, or my gut to digest my food. It's not here, and maintenance is sort of abandoned. And what I see is when I hook people up to this heart rate variability system that can view this on a computer screen, I can see the sympathetic, parasympathetic live. I can see if it's functioning normally. When you lay down on your back, the clutch should push in 3 minutes. If it doesn't, we've got a problem. And usually it's sympathetic is just stuck. It's on. Mm. I'm running a fight or flight response all the time under the hood, and I'm not aware of it up here. Mm-hmm. My body is running a survival program because, you know, everyone's life is a complex mix of two major factors. One, my personal story. The things in my life that are causing me stress. The things that have been in my life since I was a child that have caused me stress. So some people have a easier story than others. I mean, I might have a childhood where I had an abusive father who used to beat my mother, and then they got a divorce. And that happened when I was 3, and I thought it was my fault because 3-year-olds think everything happens because of them. Mm. And I put myself in jail for the rest of my life for being such a horrible bad boy to break the family up. Mm-hmm. And that stays with me. It's locked in down here somewhere. And therefore I set limits on what I can achieve and how much love I can have and how much money I can have, right. How much health I can have. Yeah. I put myself in jail because I'm such a horrible person. Mm. Because I made a mistake when I was 3 and thought it was my fault. Wrong. All from that, right? And right. When we start to unlock this zone and put it back to this place where my internal physician program is now working on its list, one of the things on that list is my physical body is storing toxins in my fat cells. And it should actually be digested and released.
Mhm.
Why is it not releasing? And I've got these traumas that I experienced emotionally. Those are locked in. I've got self-defeating belief systems that are locked in, like mom and dad got a divorce, it was my fault. Um, and all those things should be released in a timely manner. I should digest an experience and then and release the toxins emotionally, mentally, physically. And why? Why is it not happening normally? Why is it building up? Because the way the body works is, my physical body has these toxins storing in my fat tissues and it alerts my brain and says, hey, I've got this work order here. I want to release these toxins from my body. And the brain goes, well, give me a second. Let me do a self-diagnosis and make sure that it's going to be okay to release those toxins. I have to be able to handle the extra stress of that activity. And when I do a self-diagnosis, I'm screwed. I've been running a fight or flight response for 10 years. I burned up all my resources. That's the reason why you're going to have to hold that in your cells, because I'm not up to releasing it right now because I'm broken.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with the emotional body. I've got a work order for releasing this traumatic emotion I've got stored. It holds my energy. It sucks my energy to hold it.
Mm-hmm.
That energy is not for me anymore. I don't have that energy anymore. It's locked up. Fats, the toxins in my fat cells locking up. My self-defeating belief system is taking some of my energy. So all of a sudden, I don't have a full plate of energy to use to get through my day. I'm running at a deficit. And so when I use this scientific method for a precisely tuned sound frequency that forces the clutch to push in, I lay you down, I hook you up, my heart rate variability shows me your sympathetic is just on. It's not collapsing down.
Mm.
So I can expose you to a precisely tuned sound frequency that's unique to you that makes this happen. And now I just broke the back of that vicious cycle and returned you to a normal state. And now we're going to do this as a series of treatments with this sound wave. And every time you listen to it, this happens. And every time this happens, it gets stronger to happen. It's called a learned neurological response. It's like going to a gym, building up a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Except the muscle is your autonomic nervous system. And what it's muscling up is its ability to be in a zero stress state where the energy comes back to my reservoir and I can work on my list from the inside out. And now this standing work order from my body can be honored when the autonomic nervous system has repaired itself up to a point where it goes, oh, actually, I am strong enough now to release that level 1 toxin from your fat cells. So let's do that.
Yeah.
So that's where I'll see a patient will have their first detox response. Mm-hmm. The body will do something called making hay while the sun shines, right? It will pull out all the stops and try to dump as much toxins as possible in case this kind of goes away for some reason, right? So it'll recruit the secondary elimination systems, sinuses, lungs, and skin. Mm-hmm. I might have a cough. I might cough some stuff up. I might have a sinus. I might feel like I've got the flu. I might break out on a rash. Poisons are coming out through my skin. This is good stuff. It'll last for 24 to 48 hours. Should last for longer than that. I'm pumping poisons out everywhere I can. And now I'm cleaner, more balanced because of that.
Right.
Now give it another couple of weeks and I'm stronger still, and I can release the level 2 toxins. And now all of a sudden my emotional body says, hey, I've got this work order. Mm-hmm. And it says, oh, I can release that level 1 emotional trauma you've been requesting now. So a person will have their first emotional release. And at some point, they're going to get to a point where it's the self-defeating belief system. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to relive that. And I'm going to realize, oh my God, that wasn't my fault. My adult brain is superimposed on top of my 3-year-old brain and relives that experience and goes, no, this was not your fault. This had nothing to do with you, and that charge blows off. And when that charge blows off, I'm not in jail anymore.
Fantastic.
And something really interesting begins to happen. The universe begins to open doors and turn lights green, and the wrong person's the right person, the wrong number is the right person on the phone call. It becomes this thing that is bigger than you. It becomes this series of synchronicity, serendipities that take place. And you're going, what the heck is going on? And what's going on is all of these opportunities that have been waiting in the wings, that have been trying to give you these opportunities, but they couldn't get their hand through the bars of your jail cell. There's no more jail cell. And they're stepping forward anyway. You earned those.
Yeah.
They're yours. And then the biggest, deepest healings that I see is the next one in line is my spiritual issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is all of us are fated. Fate puts us on a path. We've got no choice. We have to walk this path in our life. And the path is always going to lead to a fork. And when we arrive at this fork, we're fated to make a free will decision. And the decision is, which fork am I going to take, the right one or the left one? And the right fork is the pulling of my heart, of my soul, is pulling me there. Do that. Right. That gets my juices flowing. Do that one.
Right.
But that one is a tightrope over a chasm with no net. And my rational thinking mind is looking at that path and going, that feels good, but I can't figure out how I'm going to make a living doing that. How am I going to make it work that way?
Right.
But on the other path is the path of safety. And all my mentors are whispering in my ears going, grow up, get a job, right? Because you can work for safety that way, you work for retirement, you can do this, you can do that. And the moment that I take the safe path is where the disease starts. And what I mean by disease is dis-ease, a lack of ease in my autonomic nervous system. The ultimate state of ease is homeostasis, zero stress in the system.
Yes.
And when it's not, we have a moment of dis-ease. It's no longer in a state of ease. It's a state of dis-ease. It's a conundrum. It's a disturbance. And every time I make a choice of one of those two paths, that path leads to another fork forever. Fork after fork after fork. Fate, free will, fate, free will, fate, free will. And every time I choose the safe path, I get deeper into the disease. More and more symptoms. My spirit is crying in pain because I'm not walking the path that I'm here for, that makes the best use of all the talents that I'm born with, that the universe put me in place here to achieve. I'm here for a very specific purpose. I'm me because everything about me is different. Everything about me is unique. The unique Nick's conglomeration of talents that only I have is specifically designed to do only one job that only I can do. And my job in life is to find out what's my job.
Yeah, exactly.
My job is to find out what I'm here for and then to do that. And if I'm not doing that, I'm off on a side trip spinning around getting nowhere, wasting my life. And my spirit is going crazy and freaking out. And when you take those left paths for long enough, and the disease deepens to a level of deepness, that's the road to cancer.
Right.
And when those people come to me, and they have a revelation, this is what spontaneous remission is all about. That the fear factor of getting the cancer death sentence, so to speak, for some people, The fear factor is powerful enough to penetrate down into the depths of me to a place where it can break my spirit free of its own private jail cell. The jail cell that always chooses the left fork of safety instead of the right one. And the revelation is that, well, the person who has this spontaneous remission is somebody who goes down there and something comes forth out of that jail. Some part of my spirit stands up and says, no, I don't think so. I am not going to be the person who dies of cancer in this reality. Ain't going to happen. I'm going to make a different decision than that. And in a quantum field, poof, it's gone. I've seen these people. I mean, the doctors are looking at the x-rays, scratching their heads thinking maybe we're looking at the wrong x-rays. That's the only model they've got in their brain to explain something like this, because they still believe in that the universe is based on Newtonian physics.
Yes. Right.
We've moved beyond that. It's quantum physics. It's not Newtonian physics. There is no objective solid body here. There's no objective solid reality anywhere. I mean, the fact that I'm in high school physics, my body is made of cells. My cells are made of compounds. So compounds are made of atoms, and the atoms are made of component parts, protons, electrons, and neutrons. And those are made of smaller parts and smaller parts and smaller parts, hadrons, leptons, quarks, charms. Eventually, you atoms smash the smallest particle open, and there's nothing inside except energy, pattern, relationships in a state of vibration, forming standing waves. It's like those Chladni plate experiments, the metal plate with the sand on top, coming through, and it forms these geometric patterns. Every frequency, you start turning the dial, the frequency changes, the pattern shifts, forms a new pattern.
Yeah, they look like mandalas.
Yeah, and so when you look at that, you see all these lines of sand in this beautiful mandala pattern, and you look closer with a magnifying glass, you realize, oh, that's not a line at all. It's an illusion. It looks like a line. It's not. It's dancing sand particles. They're all accumulating along this single place, according to the underlying laws of physics.
Interesting.
But there's no actual line there. A bunch of sand particles dancing. So if you look at the sand particle, you're back to what we talked about before. It's made of compounds, of atoms, of quarks and charms and hadrons and leptons. And at the base of it is energy pattern relationships of something that's vibrating and forming a standing wave, and we can't measure that something. It's invisible. There's an invisible something that is in a state of resonance forming standing waves. And the standing waves obey the laws that we see that operate in this macro world as well. But here we call it mathematical relationships of harmonics and overtones. It's the same math that governs music.
Right.
The standing waves are fitting together. Like we have a standing wave of 1 hertz, or a standing wave of 100 hertz. And within that, we've got one of 50 hertz that fits nice, perfectly in between, because they're a mathematical relationship of each other, of an octave or a harmonic. Octaves and harmonics fit together. Disharmonic frequencies don't fit together. They bump together.
Yeah.
They create turbulence and disturbance. It's disharmonious. And the reason we love music is because our body is based on the same principles that we see in the harmonic relationships of various frequencies on a piano. White and black keys are very specific frequencies. They're all in mathematical relationships to each other that we call harmonies, overtones. Your body's based on the same, the universe is based on the same math. The periodic table is based on the same math. The structure of the atoms is based on the same math. So of course music is good to me. It sounds good to me because it's reiterating at a deep unconscious level a recognition of a mathematical pattern that consciousness at a quantum level used to design my body from the quantum field standing waves nested together, stacked together, that looks like a person. But as a scientist, we all know that this is a big illusion. It's not that at all. And of course, vibration therapy works because we're creating sound. For me, sound frequencies on the outside are interacting with the vibrational frequencies that make me up. And when they're aligned as octaves or harmonics, the whole thing comes together and realigns.
Right.
I'm retuning your system. That's why I call it, I'm retuning your biological system. I call it biotuning. I'm tuning your biological system back to its baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using this advanced medical monitoring system that can see the sympathetic, parasympathetic as the core representation of that system. When this is imbalanced, I mean, if master control is imbalanced, no system it controls can have a better balance than it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So if I'm 95% out of balance up here, then I'm 95% unbalanced down here.
Yeah.
Can't be better down here than it is up here. So
right. And you use something called entrainment. Can you explain how entrainment works?
Yeah, there was an article that came out in Scientific American in October 1973. You can look this up.
Oh, that's a long time ago.
A long time ago. 1973, October edition of Scientific American, Auditory Beats in the Brain. A title of the article, written by this guy named Gerald Oster, spelled with a G, Gerald Oster. In this experiment, he was hooking people up to EEG machines and exploring this entrainment of brainwaves idea. It had originally been explored by the US Navy with flashing lights. Lights that are flashing at a brainwave speed cause the brainwaves to respond. He wanted to see if he could do it with sound waves. The underlying principle of all this, by the way, is a deeper principle of physics called the principle of coupled oscillators. And take your pen out, here we go again. There was an excellent definitive article about this law, again in Scientific American, and that was the December 1993 edition. And the title of that article is called Coupled Oscillators and Biological Synchronization. So coupled oscillators is this universal law in which all things in nature attempt to time themselves to each other. Why? To save energy, because it's an ecological universe. Get the most work with the least amount of energy expended with the least amount of waste. So biological systems, and in particular the brain, which drives those systems, is the finest degree of example of forming a coupled oscillator pair or a coupled oscillator network. It's really the principle of why the wine glass vibrates when you sing the right note. So
okay.
If I have a wine glass and I don't have a wine glass, so we'll have to use my coffee cup.
Okay.
Pretend my coffee cup is a wine glass. And
Okay.
how you know what note to sing is you ping the glass and you sing that note. That's called direct resonance. But if I sing any octave of that note, and an octave is 1/2 the frequency or double, if I sing any octave of that note, the wine glass will vibrate. It's called octave resonance. Mm-hmm. If I sing any harmonic of that note, the wine glass will vibrate. That's harmonic resonance. 1/3, 1/5, 1/7, 1/9 fractional relationships. Mm-hmm. And that's what music on a piano keyboard is. I see that grand piano back there.
Beautiful.
The white and black keys are tuned to specific fractional relationships to each other. And those are harmonic relationships that we look upon as pleasing. The body is designed the same way. The universe is designed the same way. So if we use that same principle of coupled oscillators and how the body is put together. So the body is also trying to obey the same rule of get the most work with the least amount of energy expended. And one of the ways it's doing that is why I have body clocks. And body clocks, my circadian rhythms, are there to save energy. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to time my body rhythms to rhythms in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to time myself to a rhythm that's already happening, because it saves energy to latch onto something that's already happening than to invent it every second over and over and over again on my own. It takes too much energy to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can time myself to the world, it's better. That's what, if you're a woman, you have a menstrual cycle every 28 and a half days.
Yeah.
Because your pineal gland is sensitive to light dark cycles, is hardwired to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the autonomic nervous system that is the center of my bioclocks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's timing my ovulation cycle to the full moon, new moon cycle, 28 and a half days. Early on, that was a big part of my practice, women's problems. And of the women who had irregular menstrual cycles, it's the pineal gland imbalance. The body clocks are not timed to the full moon, new moon cycle. And so the body's trying to get back in step by having 2 periods a month or skipping a month.
Right.
Irregular menstrual cycles. And
okay.
so I could fix about 40% of those women by having them burn a teeny tiny little Christmas tree light bulb by the window during the 2 weeks of the new moon, no moon out.
Wow.
Fooling the pineal gland to think the full moon is still shining through the window, that resets the clock.
Oh my God.
Takes about 3 months. The period gets a little weird for 3 months, and then all of a sudden it snaps back.
Interesting.
Seasonal affective disorder is how I set my body thermostat for the correct season. And that's important because 98.6 degrees has to be maintained. It's critical for my survival. So I need my body thermostat to be set for winter, in the middle of winter, in the summer, in the middle of summer. Because in the middle of summer, which might be 90 degrees, and you have a cold day of 60 degrees, everybody's running and putting their coat on. But if I teleported you into the middle of wintertime, where it's usually 10 degrees, and we get a hot day of 60, everybody's taking their coat off. Same degree of temperature, 60 degrees, different body thermostat setting, right? So if that's out of sync, how it gets in sync is the pineal gland is sensitive to the length of the day. And the length of the day is never the same 2 days in a row, right? It's always getting shorter and shorter to the winter equinox, longer and longer to the summer equinox. And I'm setting my body thermostat accordingly. But if it's out of sync, my body thermostat is not set for the correct season, and my body is just pumping out energy, trying to equalize my internal body temperature until it blows all my stress handling fuses, and I end up with clinical depression and suicide.
Wow.
The whole system collapses. That's why we've got the body clocks. That's why we've timing ourselves with the internal body thermostat. That's how important it is.
Right.
So you fix that by exposing a person to a full spectrum daylight bulb for 1 hour a day to reset the clock, thinking the day length is longer.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind was my first experiments in training brainwaves, with sound waves. And this is what Gerald Oster was doing in this article in the Scientific American. He's hooking people up to EEG machines, and he's exposing them to a sound as pulsing at a brainwave speed. And the brainwaves will try to latch onto that because that's the strongest external pulse. And I'll always look for the strongest one in my environment.
Right.
I just supplied that. And in this case, let's say that it's a drum. Earliest example of brain entrainment is shamanic drumming practices.
Right.
Now I do have a drum, but it's way back there. I'm not going to go get it.
Okay.
Let's pretend this is a drum.
Okay.
Calculator.
Improvising.
And this is a drum. And I've done extensive research into shamanic drum beats and what they're doing. So this is a classic. That's about right. And that is 4.5 cycles per second.
Mm-hmm.
or 4.5 to 5 cycles per second. That's a theta brainwave. That's where your brainwaves go in dreaming sleep.
Yeah, right.
And if I pound this drum at 5 hertz and dance around a bonfire at nighttime, and what will happen is that that becomes the most dominant pulse in your field, and your brain waves, which are awake in beta at about 20 hertz, will start to slow down in order to match this 5 hertz pulse. And I will go into lower beta, I'll cross over into alpha, and I'll go into deep alpha, I'll cross over into theta, I'll go into deep theta at 5 hertz. And what it means is, and it will lock on there. What it means is, with a simple drum beat at the right speed, I can take you from a waking state into a dream state without going to sleep first. That's the classic definition of a trance.
Mm-hmm.
Classic definition of a hypnagogic state. You're not asleep, you're not dreaming, but you're in this trance state. And I put you there in less than 3 minutes with a drum. So this is where Gerald Oster is at. Let's create a drum beat and see if, and confirm that that works with the EEG. We're pounding the drum at 5 hertz. We're watching the EEG trace at beta. Slow down, slow down, slow down. Lock on and stay there. Now, if I speed the drum beat up, your brain waves follow. If I slow the drum beat down, your brain waves follow. That's called the frequency following response in EEG. Okay. So now I wanted to see what would happen if it was a phantom pulse, not created by a drum or clapping my hands or whatever. And so we created something called a binaural beat. Binaural means two, aural means sound, so 2 sounds. And he did it with sine waves. Sine waves is generated by an electronic oscillator. It's a man-made tone with no harmonics. It's the emergency broadcast tone. Right. You know. And he took 2 of them, 2 speakers. One speaker has 100 hertz tone, and the other speaker has 105, slightly out of tune. They're not a harmonic ratio of each other. So by taking 100 and 105, now we got the 5 hertz pulse, the same as a drum beat. Except the pulse is one of these Mr. Wizard kind of magical things, because that pulsing that we're hearing is really kind of a collision of air molecules that are driven by the sound waves from the 2 speakers. Right. Right? And sound, you have to understand, is a unique thing in the universe. When I went to high school, we learned about the electromagnetic spectrum that has radio and television waves and microwaves and X-rays and color frequencies and gamma rays and cosmic rays. Remember that? And they get finer and faster and as you go up the scale. And we're taught from Einstein and the electromagnetic effect that photons form everything. Light is the world. Electromagnetism is the world, except for one thing that we weren't taught. There's only one thing in the universe that is not on that scale: sound waves. Sound waves are a mechanical energy wave, pure energy moving through a medium. So sound coming out of your speaker is using air molecules as the medium to make them vibrate. And that vibrates my eardrums. And the vibrating air molecules making my eardrum vibrate is like me singing the right note for the wine glass. Mm-hmm. And it means that if I have, for instance, a tuning fork with 2 tines moving back and forth, every time the tine moves back and forth, it compresses a column of air molecules. Yeah. And then when it moves back, it creates a space. Okay. So it's moving back and forth, compressing, making a space, compressing, making a space, and those are moving away from the tines, funneling down my eardrum, making my eardrum move back and forth as each compressed wave hits my eardrum, and then a space, a wave, and a space. And now we end up with a coupled oscillator pair between the tine and my eardrum. using air molecules as the coupling agent.
Fascinating.
So now I'm explaining this because the astounding thing that Gerald Osser discovered and published in this article really changed the whole world. I mean, it launched the entire brainwave entrainment industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he's showing is that when I untune these and create a 5 cycle a second phantom pulse of air molecules, wah-wah thing happening, my brainwaves will entrain to that as if it was a drum beat, even though it's a phantom pulse. If I shut one of these two speakers off, the pulse disappears. It's just a tone. If I bring this back up in 100 and 105, I've got the 5 cycle a second wah-wah thing happening again, and my brainwaves will time themselves to it. So that's significant. Yeah, you can do it with a phantom pulse. Now the next step is, what happens if you put headphones on? Now it gets magical, because if you put headphones on, now we've got 100 and 105, and we're hearing this 5 cycle a second pulsing in the center of our head.
Yeah.
And excuse me, but where is that pulse coming from? Because we don't have air molecules colliding anymore between two speakers.
Right.
We got a brain there. I mean, I know there's certain people who've got air between their ears, but that's what we're talking about here, is like, all of a sudden, where is this pulse coming from now? It's not an air molecule collision. Now we've got a true example of a quirk of neurophysiology.
That's amazing.
And it's based on how the brain works and how the brain tries to protect me and survive. So as complex as all the different nested systems in my body are, and the autonomic nervous system has to monitor them and tune them and cohese them so they're all in harmony. As complex as that is, the body works on two basic rules. Rule number one, survive at all costs. And that's the basic rule behind my sympathetic stress response, my fight or flight response. If I feel that my system is being threatened to any degree, no matter how small, my body will have a full-blown alarm response just to be on the safe side until it can be checked out. Better to have a full-blown alarm response when it wasn't needed than to die like an idiot.
Yeah.
Because you didn't respond with the full-on thing, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
So rule number two, get the, do no self-harm. Get the most work with the least amount of energy expended. Don't waste life energy, because essentially you're doing self-harm if you do that.
Yeah.
So those two rules govern it all. And so now the body has these nested systems for accomplishing rule number two: cutting corners, jumping to conclusions before, if I jump to a conclusion before you, you're breakfast.
Right. Yeah.
Right? If I can cut corners and save life energy, I've got more endurance than you, and you're breakfast. It's why Wheel of Fortune works. I want to buy a vowel.
Right.
All right, you get the certain number of spaces filled, and all of a sudden it leaps into your brain. You just did rule number two. You just jumped to a conclusion successfully, and you win the cash. And cash is food on your table.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once again, Wheel of Fortune is breakfast.
Yeah.
Right. So so now we've got these two headphones, 100 hertz and 105. And the brain is confronted with something it's never experienced before. It's hearing a sound in this ear that this ear is not hearing. And there's a sound in this ear that this ear is not hearing. And that has never happened in the entire evolution of the whole human species. There's never been a time in the natural world where one ear would hear something that the other doesn't hear, because sound disperses everywhere. There's no possibility, particularly bilaterally, where each ear is hearing something the other one's not hearing. So as soon as the brain hears this, it goes, oh, whoa, what is this? Is this a threat? I better have an alarm response to be on the safe side. I don't know what the heck this is.
Mm.
I've got to check this out. So how am I going to check this out? I'm going to have to get my two hemispheres to talk to each other, because this hemisphere controls this ear,
Right.
and vice versa, right? So the two
Okay.
hemispheres are forced to talk to each other and synchronize all the activity across the corpus callosum.
Oh, okay.
All these pathways light up. Two hemispheres talk to each other. And as soon as this takes place, rule number 2 comes into play. The body has a knee-jerk response. It has a need to jump to a conclusion no matter what. And so the conclusion it's going to jump to here is these two hemispheres are coming together, and they instinctively know that there should be this wah-wah. And how does it know that? Because, excuse me, someplace deep down in your collective unconscious mind designed the whole universe.
Yeah.
Right? You're not a visitor here.
Yeah.
Right? This is all born out of someplace in all of us, right? So, yes, this brain knows everything there is to know about this wah-wah phenomenon. It should be there. Two separate tones create this wah-wah. And so now it's anticipating that. It's going to jump to a conclusion that the wah-wah should be there, so it manufactures it out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
These two hemispheres with the two separate tones interact those tones, induce the 5 cycle a second wah-wah sound, manufactures it from nowhere, and the real event never arrives because there's no air molecules to collide. You just trick the brain into manufacturing a pulse and then entraining to it.
Very cool.
And that's a active brainwave entrainment process, which is very different than the passive entrainment process when you're listening to the wah-wah between two speakers.
Mm.
Because with the two speakers, I get the entrainment, but I don't get the synchronicity of the hemispheres.
So headphones is the key.
Headphones is the key. So this synchronicity of the hemispheres is not just a small thing. This is one of the biggest things that happens in the brain. The synchronicity of the hemispheres only happens at crucial moments. It's the moment when an epiphany, the moment a problem, a solution drops into my brain.
Mm-hmm.
You ever been struggling and struggling and struggling, trying to, and all of a sudden whoosh, it comes.
Yes.
Orgasm, spiritual epiphany, personal epiphany, problem gets solved. Those kind of experiences, what all of us want.
Mm-hmm.
We want those experiences. We don't know how to get them. We
sure.
bless the day when they happen to us. But now all of a sudden, this guy, Gerald Oster, has figured out a way to flip the switch and make it happen. Just by putting headphones on with two tones slightly out of tune, forces the synchronicity to happen. And not only that, but in nature, when it happens, it comes together and falls right back apart again, where the right left brain do their thing. They come together and they come apart. And in that time when they're together, it's this timeless zone.
Mm-hmm.
But now, as long as you got the headphones on with these binaural beats going, your brain is floating in this state for prolonged periods of time for the first time in our whole biological evolution. And that means we're taking that part of our brain to a gym, and we're exercising this every time we listen to the headphones.
Yeah.
And what is that going to do? It's like it's ramping up our ability to problem solve, to have a eureka moment, to have personal insights. It's where creativity comes from, original ideas, out of the box thinking,
Mm-hmm.
All achieved by doing this simple little thing that was in this article in
Yeah.
Scientific American in 1973, and that sparked a whole industry of people taking sine waves and combining them together, and they're horrible to listen to. So you want to put nature sounds or something on top of it to make it okay to listen to. And then you want to do music and put music on top of it to make it nice to listen to.
Yes.
But the work is being done by these binaural beats. So back in 1984, with my recording studio, and I'm starting to compose my music,
Mm-hmm.
and My work at the clinic with sound waves resonating vertebra and cranial bones and organs in the brain was changing my approach to my own music now as a composer. It wasn't good enough just to make music anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I had to make music that had an effect. I'm looking for, I want a shamanic journey. I want a psychedelic trip. I want something to happen when I listen to this music. That's what I'm aiming at.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I'm thinking, I wonder if I could do this same thing I'm doing with timing body clocks by timing brainwaves. And because I was creating my own instrument sounds from scratch by adding 120 harmonics together to make it sound like a cello. Except I didn't want to make a cello. I wanted to make a cosmic flute sound. I wanted to make some kind of sounds I got rattling around in my head. I wanted to make those sounds.
Yeah.
Because you can't go any place to buy those. All you can do is make them. So I'm experimenting. And I realize because I'm experimenting with primitive stereo three-dimensional sound fields, I could go inside the harmonics that make that instrument sound like a flute, and I can untune the harmonics themselves inside the instrument sound and create binaural beats.
Wow.
I didn't have to use sine waves. Of course, I didn't know about sine waves. I didn't know any of that stuff then. I didn't know about Gerald Oster. I thought I was inventing it. Stupid me, right? But I actually did invent something, and I now have a patent on it. A unique way of making binaural beats that doesn't require sine waves. It's built inside the, so now I've got a flute. Let's say I had a flute solo, no other instruments, nothing else there, just a flute solo.
Mm-hmm.
I could entrain your brainwaves with just that flute solo, because inside the flute sound itself that's playing the melody is this wah-wah.
Okay.
Inside the harmonics of what makes the instrument sound like a flute. There's a subtle tremolo inside that flute that's doing it, and it's spread across the stereo field, so it's causing this to happen with headphones. Eventually, I realized I could do that I could build it into the bird chirps. I could build it into the water sounds. I could build it into anything and everything. So all of a sudden now there's no dead wood on the recording.
Yeah.
With sine waves, that's what's doing the entrainment. Everything else is just pretty dressing. To make it sound okay to listen to these sine waves, which are horrible to listen to. Mm-hmm. So that's the entrainment idea. And so when I'm doing this clinically, there's a relationship that's pretty astounding. So I'm going to hook you up to this heart rate variability device, and I'm going to see your autonomic nervous system, and I'm going to see it's imbalanced, running a fight or flight response. I know there's a frequency that will work, but I don't know what frequency it is. So I created a sound sweep of all frequencies from 50 hertz to 200 through this sound table that you're laying on. So now these sound waves are slowly changing their tuning over time into your body. And I'm watching your autonomic nervous system as it responds to that. Because as that sound sweep begins to get closer and closer to the frequency that works for you, you can see the stress level collapsing. And when it hits the exact frequency, it goes to zero. Wonderful. And my computer program will capture that frequency. And now I know what frequency to use. And now, according to the law of coupled oscillators in music theory, every octave will make the wine glass vibrate. And it's the same with your body. Every octave of this frequency will make homeostasis happen. And in your body, each octave targets different body densities of tissues. So that means that I'm, first of all, activating the vibration sense network in the body, which is separate from hearing, which is why I had to invent a sound table as a delivery device for the low frequencies that activate the vibration sense network. 4 skin sensor cells that are each sensitive to a different vibrational frequency range communicate to the posterior spinal cord, to neurons in your brainstem that cross over to the opposite side And those 4 skin sensors are sensitive, overall 4 of them, from 0.3 to 500 hertz. That's what the body considers to be what I can feel.
Mm-hmm.
Beethoven went deaf.
Oh,
Think about it. He went, the famous composers of all time goes deaf, and he
yeah.
composes 3 symphonies. And how he heard them was by putting his head on the piano and hearing through bone conduction,
Okay.
activating the vibration sense network. So that's what the sound table is designed to deliver. So now if I play the octave that balances your nervous system at the top end of that range, you feel it in your skin.
Yeah.
But if I drop the octave, you feel it in your muscles, different body
Okay.
density. If I drop it an octave, you feel it in your discs and your tendons and your ligaments. If I drop it an octave, you feel it in your bones, bone conduction octave. If I drop it an octave, you feel it in your fluids. Sound waves push fluids.
Mm.
Streaming effect, cardiovascular fluids, cerebral spinal fluids. Lymphatic fluids. And then if I use my calculator and keep subtracting octaves, divide it in half, divide it in half, divide it in half, I drop below the range of human hearing at 20 hertz, but I still have a bunch of numbers. And those numbers are now exact brainwave frequencies accurate to a couple of decimal points.
Wow.
Beta, alpha, theta, delta, epsilon, gamma, default mode network, all of those brain frequencies now are identified as a precise frequency accurate to a couple of decimal points. And if I use my binaural beats and set them so that they entrain you to any of those octave brain states, this happens in your autonomic nervous system.
Synchronization.
Even if I have no sound playing through the sound table at all, just the 2 tones set to one of the brain octaves of the tone, then this now happens for a completely different reason, because I'm picking the lock of a neural program and making it run.
Wow.
And that's what sleep is all about. When I drop off into sleep, into alpha sleep, my brainwaves will slow down until they hit that key alpha frequency. And this happens, and this is a prerequisite for healing. So that's when my mind is being healed for the next day. In theta, bang, that's where my emotions are being healed. Delta, bang, that's where my physical body is being healed. And so now if I combine those 2 together in a therapy session, you've got headphones on, you're laying on the sound table that's split down the middle to match the headphones. That's key and important. So that the network of information processing matches here to here. Then the sound waves are pure energy moving into your body, so filling your body up with energy.
Mm-hmm.
Sound waves, mechanical energy wave, pure energy moving into fluids and bone conduction.
Yeah.
Highly effective. I'm filling your body up with this mechanical energy, and then I'm directing your brain waves to an octave state that tells your brain where to put that energy for healing. So I can direct the energy into your physical body, into your emotions, into your mind, into your spirit. Epsilon is, out of the body, precognitive, psychic. So now it becomes this thing of interaction between the vibration sense network, my hearing network, and those start to synchronize up.
Yeah.
The more synchronizing systems I can do, the better. I've got light glasses I have a patent on. The little lights are driven by the sound waves you're hearing. So you're seeing what you're hearing, what you're feeling, synchronized this way and synchronized this way. The 3 primary perceptual modes in NLP, right? Visual type of people, auditory type people, kinesthetic type people.
So you take clients directly, but here's the really cool thing: on your website, people can purchase digital downloads of these meditations, and thereby, I think I read on your website, it's almost like a shortcut. I was reading, either I heard an interview with you or I read it on your website where you were talking about these Buddhist monks, and it usually takes them 7 years to get their brain waves to this certain state where they had to meditate for years and years. And by simply going to your website and purchasing a digital download, you can actually shortcut that 7 years and potentially get into that heightened brain state. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's one of the hallmarks of EEG studies of different types of meditation practices from various parts of the world. One of the hallmarks that they all have in common is synchronizing of the hemispheres.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a Zen meditation, then I'm sitting on my pillow. I'm very aware that I'm here in the room. I'm aware that I'm breathing. I'm aware that there's sounds out the window, that there's a breeze, that there's a smell. It's a mandala. I'm not focused on any one of those elements outside the rest.
Mm-hmm.
My focus is on everything. That's a hallmark of alpha. That's what alpha brain state. Beta is I'm focused on a single thing, a task. Alpha is peripheral vision. I'm focused on everything. So that's what you see with Zen meditators. Synchronizing of the hemispheres, strong alpha.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm doing a shamanic journey, or I'm meditating on visualizing my chakras, or I'm a Christian prayer, I'm walking and talking with angels or talking with Jesus, I'm not aware I'm in the room. I'm not aware I've got this body. I'm someplace else. I'm a shaman climbing a mountain, or going in a cave and talking to a totem animal, or getting a secret from a shaman or something. That's a hallmark of theta. And those kind of practices, EEG, show maximum amplitudes in theta. Delta, you're in a timeless zone where you're not awake and you're not asleep, you're not here, you're not there. You're in some void state filled with an emotion, bliss or something. The Dalai Lama did an experiment at the University of Wisconsin with fMRI and brain mapping computers with these monks who have been meditating for 30 years with a certain Tibetan Buddhist technique.
Yeah.
And what did they see? Massive amplitudes of gamma brain activity. Mm-hmm. So that particular technique generates gamma, this one alpha, this one theta. Every single brain state is a doorway to the big God room.
Sounds good to me.
Right? So you got the big God room, you got a whole bunch of doors, and each door is a certain meditation technique that somebody dreamed up in some culture somewhere.
Yeah.
All kinds of different ways of getting to the same place. One of those doors works really well for your biological system. And you wouldn't know which one it is unless you try them all. So that's part of what I'm trying to do there on the website, is to provide them all, a smorgasbord of every brain state you can think of, based on the research of EEG studies of people in enlightened states.
Right.
Including something called the awakened mind pattern, which was an EEG researcher from England, C. Maxwell Cade, developed his own EEG device that showed all the brain activity on both hemispheres, that showed that it's really a pattern of beta, alpha, theta, delta, where it really is. Mm-hmm. So the idea is to, at a certain point, you're no longer a broken person trying to get fixed, even though I've got a whole bunch of soundtracks for healing, very categories.
Yeah.
Healing, meditation, relaxation, memory, learning, creativity, for boosting those brain states and exercising it in a gym. But the real meat and potatoes of the work of my work is altered states, higher states of self-awareness, of expanding consciousness. That's where it's really at.
These are
because
definitely
ultimately you're no longer a broken person trying to get fixed. You're a fixed person asking now what? And the now what is the question of humanity.
Yeah.
What do I do? I mean, what am I here for? What's my life purpose? What am I supposed to be doing?
Exactly.
Why am I sick? Why is there not enough money? Why is there not enough love? What's wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Can you give us the name of your website, please? Because I think that a number of our listeners and viewers are very interested in being able to tap into these more ecstatic states of consciousness and healing and finding out their life purpose. Where can they go to purchase these digital downloads?
It's Scientific Sounds with an S.
Okay, and we'll put it on the
.com.
bottom here as well, but you can say it as well.
Yeah.
What is it?
So
Scientific.
it's scientificsounds.com.
Perfect.
If you type that in, you'll get there.
Exactly.
I have another website, and that's for professionals who I train.
Oh, okay.
Um,
You train people in this thing called biotuning, right?
yes, I train practitioners in this technique I was describing.
Okay, so for anybody in our audience that's interested in professional certification under Dr. Jeffrey, what is the name of that website?
That one is called the, let me just write one thing.
Okay, no problem.
It's called the Center for Neuroacoustic Research. It's a
Perfect.
mouthful. It's
Center for
neuroacoustic.
Acoustic Research.
So it's Center for Neuroacoustic Research. And if you just do a Google search for my name, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, you'll come up with all those things. I also have a live stream I do every Sunday. That's for free. That's on my YouTube channel. And if you go to YouTube and you type in my name, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, you'll find it. But there is a website for that too, which I'll write here. It's bit.ly/Dr. Thompson Live.
There we go. And we'll make sure we put it at the bottom of this video as well.
So the Dr. Thompson Live, the D and the T and the L are capitalized.
Okay.
This will bring you to my YouTube channel, and it will show you all the live streams I've done. Well, I've been doing them now for over a year, every Sunday for an hour.
They're excellent. I have
and we have a
participated
soundtrack at the end that you listen to, and you get a free download of that.
Right. Yeah. So everybody does a kind of what you call a mind link, where we all meditate at the same time. Yes.
Well, if you have two people listening to the same binaural beat soundtrack and both have headphones on, you link their brainwaves together. It's a mind link, because brainwaves are exactly resonating exactly the same frequency simultaneously with each other, and it forms this link that you can measure.
Awesome. Dr. Jeffrey, it's been a real pleasure for us to have you on today's podcast. Thank you so much.
Great being here with you.
All right.
Thank you. Anytime.
Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to having you again, because I'd love to continue to talk about the default mode network maybe next time.
Hey, we just scratched the surface here.
I know. I wish we could go on and on.
I mean, I've been talking for a year. I'm not done yet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we definitely would like to. You're welcome back to the show anytime you want, for sure. Thank you so much,
great.
Dr. Jeffrey Thompson.
You're welcome.
Okay.
See you later.
Thank you. And thank you very much, everybody, for watching and listening to another edition of the Soul Inspire Audio Video Podcast. Until next time, I'm Dale Cross.